South. So I think
that guy in the locker room, you know he's the guy in the locker room that's there.
Honest, I just put on music and just zone out. I just go.
Thanks, Hector.
Why blame? Why you're
because they're pushing.
You know, they weren't expected to have that 13-game win streak.
This is the gift that God has given me.
It was the best team in baseball.
Finish this out. Finish this out.
Carolyn, hold on. I have a question for you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back on another episode of the Doug Saravo Show, which is brought to you by our good friends at the Monkey Bar and Grill. Swing on by. We have the host of the Madison Miller Podcast on today. Madison, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. Looking forward to start season 8 of the Doug Saravo Show. You're starting off the season.
That's wonderful. I love the fact that I'm starting off a new season of the Doug Saravo Show. So looking forward to what's on tap today.
So tonight is game 1 of preseason. We got the Giants and the Lions. So let's start with our beloved New York Giants. Where do you think this team goes this year? Daniel Jones is the guy for now. So where do you see this Giants team going?
This is not an easy question per se. I really am not sure, but if you ask me right now, I would say somewhere between 6 and 8 wins. And I feel like if there's injuries, it could go beneath 6 wins. But on the flip side, if there's players that unexpectedly emerge, Daniel Jones plays well, and say the Cowboys or the Eagles regress, there is a world where the Giants surprise us and have a winning season. So I think there are many scenarios for this Giants team, but I would say somewhere between 6 and 9 wins probably for right now. But depends on injuries and such in the preseason. So that's something to watch for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we're going to be as bad as people think. I see us winning 7 to 8 games. There's no reason for us to have a disaster of a season. I think they're going to compete. Playoffs could be a long shot, but you never know. So do you think this team is going to miss Saquon Barkley?
Yes, I do think the team's going to miss Saquon Barkley. I think there are one of the teams that they'll actually miss a running back because everyone says, oh, running back's replaceable. I'm just a big Saquon Barkley fan, and I think he is going to be outstanding behind that Philadelphia Eagles offensive line there because that offensive line is much better than what the Giants had. But at the same time, the Giants did improve their offensive line this year in the offseason. And I do think that the guy they picked up, Singletary, is a downgrade from Saquon, obviously. But, yes, I do think Saquon is going to be missed. And I think there's a chance he's missed more than people think.
So let's talk about Daniel Jones. Does he have a lot of weight on his shoulder? You can say that, but for most of his career, he's been hurt. He really hasn't had an O-line. So how much does he have left in the tank to prove to this Giants organization that I'm worth the paycheck that you gave me?
I think this year is a make or break year for Daniel Jones personally. The injury last year really wasn't great. He's been hurt a lot, as he said. The offensive line is better, and they drafted Malik Neighbors. And hopefully Neighbors could be the WR1 that they've lacked since Odell Beckham Jr. when Odell was in his prime back before Daniel Jones was the quarterback of the Giants. So I think the Giants put the pieces together for Daniel Jones to be successful. And if he's not successful, I could see them moving on at the end of the season.
Now, I'm sure you've been watching the Giants Hard Knocks off season on Max. I've watched almost every episode so far, and it seems like that they weren't really certain on bringing back Barkley. They weren't sure about the pay they were going to give him. They said we could franchise him, maybe trade him. So do you think it was always the New York Giants' intention to move on from Saquon Barkley?
I think it was Joe Shane's intention to move on, but not John Mara's in a weird way. I personally think John Mara wanted to pay him and keep him, and Joe Shane went the new modern day NFL way of running backs are replaceable. That's how I personally feel about it. And Listen, I think Joe Shane's done a nice job as Giants GM and not as bad as some people have made him out to be, and not obviously as awful as Dave Gettleman was. But like I said, I do think they'll miss Saquon Barkley, but I do think it was more of a Joe Shane, Brian Daboll decision to let go of Saquon Barkley, and they probably felt that he wasn't worth the price tag that he wanted.
Now, the Giants did improve on their defense. I believe they brought in Brian Burns, which they did. So, how important is the Giants' defense going to be for this team, despite if the offense puts up the points?
I think the defense is going to be very important for the Giants, especially the pass rush. The pass rush is the strength of their team. Dexter Lawrence is a top 3 defensive tackle in all of football. Brian Burns, I think, makes that pass rush better to go with him and Kayvon Thibodeau, who I think is going to be better. The linebacking corps are actually better with Bobby Okerke in his second year at the team. And then the secondary, to me, is probably the weakest spot of the Giants' defense. But I do like the rookie from last year, now second-year player, Deontay Banks. And I think he's going to be better. So I think the strength of the Giants team is actually going to be their defense. And that is a big reason why I think that they could potentially win more than 6 games this season.
All right, now I hate to do it. I hate to talk about the Jets and the Aaron Rodgers love fest that people like to talk about, but we have to talk about it. So if Aaron Rodgers does stay healthy, where do you see this New York Jets team going?
If Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, I think that the Jets could go as far. If things were to break right, I think they could go as far as the AFC title game or even the Super Bowl, depending on what surrounds them in the AFC. The problem for the Jets is that they're in a loaded conference. Do I think they're a playoff team? If I have to sit here right now, I'm going to say yes, but that could change obviously in the next couple weeks when I do predictions. But I do think the Jets can go on a big run. I mean, it obviously comes down to Rodgers' health, and the Jets obviously have a better roster than they did a year ago. Granted, Rodgers is back, but they bring in Mike Williams. Their receiving's better, and then I really like Breece Hall in a full season after he came back after the injury from the year prior to that. So I do like the Jets' chances as long as they stay healthy. But I think people forget that Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and all these other great quarterbacks are in that division. Or in that conference, I mean. And there's other good teams in that conference too, like the Steelers and the Browns, and maybe the Chargers can surprise some people with Herbert and Jim Harbaugh there now. So I think it can be hard for the Jets, but at the same time, I think there's a road where they're successful.
Again, if you're just joining us, we have Madison Miller on of the Madison Miller Podcast. So now we're going to stay in the AFC East. You have the Miami Dolphins, you have the Buffalo Bills, New York Jets, New England Patriots. But the Buffalo Bills got rid of a lot of guys on that defense. Are they going to be a team that falls in the AFC East, even the AFC?
The AFC as a whole, maybe, but the AFC East, probably not. Only because I am down on the Miami Dolphins. And I feel like the Dolphins might have lost some more pieces than people have realized. I mean, they signed Shaq Barrett, then he retires, and then they did get rid of some guys on their defense, which I think is being overlooked. And I get it. The Bills lost Diggs and they lost some other guys, but I still think the Bills are going to be right there in that division. But in the AFC as a whole, I don't think the Bills are a top 2 AFC team per se, but I think that they should be the favorites in that division over the Jets and the Dolphins.
All right, so later on, we're going to get into our Super Bowl bets, our Super Bowl predictions. But I want to get on to some Major League Baseball because it is August. It's past the deadline. Who would you say was your winner and your loser of MLB trade deadline day?
Of MLB trade deadline day. All right, and I have a question for you. Do sellers count or is it just the buyers?
It could be anything.
Okay, so deadline day, I personally felt that the Blue Jays from a seller standpoint and your beloved Tampa Bay Rays did the best from a seller standpoint. And the American League from a buyer standpoint, at the time, I didn't think anybody stood out. But now looking back, maybe the Yankees were the team that ended up winning the day. I liked the Jazz Chisholm pickup, but I didn't think it was going to be super duper impactful. But I know last night with Stanley, they lost yesterday, but since they got him, if I'm not mistaken, they're 7-3. There's something in that realm since they got Jazz Chisholm, and their offense has been really good. So maybe the Yankees did turn out to be the winners from an American League buyer standpoint, and then from the National League, I really think that the Phillies improved their bullpen a little bit by getting some pieces, but they really haven't played well other than this past Dodgers game. Like in the moment, I thought Philadelphia did well in the deadline. And a sneaky winner, in my opinion, at the deadline, granted, they haven't played great since the deadline, has been the Mets. I really think the Mets improved their team at the trade deadline by getting the pitcher Blackburn from Oakland, and they got a couple of good relievers to improve their bullpen, and they got the guy from the Nats, Jesse Winker. So, like, I really thought in the moment the Mets won from a buyer standpoint in the National League, and in sellers in the National League, nobody really jumped out to me. Maybe you could argue the Cubs, but the Cubs to me did a little bit of both buying and selling with the Paredes deal with your team, and then they traded some people away. They traded Mark Leiter Jr. to the Yankees. So I thought the Cubs did some interesting things from a buying and the selling standpoint, but I think it's going to come down to October. I really, really do. And obviously the Padres did really, really good at the trade deadline as well in the National League.
Now, from your point of view, will Pete Alonso be a New York Met beyond 2024?
Ooh, that's a good question. At gunpoint, I'm probably going to say no, but I could be wrong. I wouldn't rule out yes, but that's an opinion that could change come October, November. But right now, I would have to lean no, and I think that the Mets are going to do everything to try to get Juan Soto from the Yankees, but I don't think they'll land Juan Soto either. So maybe they will end up re-signing Alonso. But to me, that's too hard to call. But I'm leaning 60-40 no for Alonso right now for the Mets.
So post-deadline, is there a surprise team for you that can make a run to the World Series? For me, I think it could be the Kansas City Royals or the San Diego Padres that can make that surprise run. Because if you look at the prior years, besides the Houston Astros, 7 straight years of ALCS appearances, majority of the teams that have that first round bye don't get to the ALCS or the NLCS. It's always that wild card team that sneaks in there. Arizona Diamondbacks in 2023, along with the Texas Rangers, Philadelphia Phillies in 2022. So is there going to be a team that surprises you? And personally, from a point of view, I think the Yankees and the Mets are going to be in a perfect position to make a run because they'll, as of now, have that bye. They won't have that bye, but they'll have that wild card matchup.
I think there's a chance the Yankees win the AL East, Doug. I really do. So, but at the same time, I wouldn't mind it if they didn't win the division because, like you said, the bye hurts teams sometimes, as we saw with the Braves the last couple of years. But to the answer to your question, I think it's a team you mentioned. I think the Padres have the best shot to make a run. I actually have a Padres to win the National League future at 13-1 with some other things like Liberty to win the WNBA title. It's like a big parlay I put together that included the Padres at 13-1 to win the National League pennant. So I have to go with the Padres with what they did, bringing in Araz and bringing in a bunch of the guys that they brought in, the Marlins closer, Tanner Scott. So I think that team is the Padres that can make a run in the National League. But in the American League, I do like your Royals call. I'm a big Bobby Witt fan, and it'd be cool to see Salvador Perez go on another run again because he was just a young player entering his prime when the Royals won it in 15 and when they went in 14. So it'd be cool to see him get back to the World Series, but I'm still not willing to count out the Astros. I'm sorry. I know they have been a little struggling of late, and then they went on that run earlier in the summer, but I can't count out Houston just because of their pedigree and such. So I can't count them out either.
Yeah, I remember at a point they were 7-19, and I was listening to Ben Verlander's podcast, or it was just a clip on Instagram, and he came out and said, when it's all said and done, when it's October, the Houston Astros will be in the ALCS again. And whoever the co-host is with him, she said, "Are you serious? They're 7-19." And he said, "What does that have to do with right now? They still have Altuve, they still have Bregman, they still have Alvarez. It's a long season, and I'm pretty sure that the Astros will be back there in the ALCS."
I would really be interested to see what the odds are on FanDuel right now of a Yankees Astros ALCS. Listen, that's probably my biggest fear, but I want to see the odds of that so bad. Or a Padres Astros World Series, nevertheless.
So if you had to pick a team to make it to the World Series and have a matchup, what would it be from the American League and the National League?
I'm going Padres in the National League. I'm sticking to my surprise pick there. The American League, maybe 3 weeks ago I would have said the Baltimore Orioles, but they've been struggling. The AL is such a hard call. I mean, I'm going to begrudgingly say the Yankees, but I don't feel good about it. And then that's only because they're playing the best right now between them and the Astros and the Orioles. And those, to me, are the three most likely candidates in the American League, unless if the Royals can make a run. But I'm going to go Yankees-Padres right now, the Juan Soto Bowl.
The Juan Soto Bowl. I think the Arizona Diamondbacks could get back there. I think I said on a show a while back with the boys, maybe in like December or even February, that the Diamondbacks may get back there and go to the World Series. And they've been playing good baseball as of late. But that National League wild card, it's going to go down to the wire. You got so many good teams in, and then you got so many good teams out.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get to our Super Bowl bets, I want to talk about the New York Knicks a little bit because they are a local team and you are a Knicks fan. Does this team have what it takes to dethrone the Boston Celtics in the East now that they brought in Bridges?
I think they can dethrone the Celtics. I really, really do. I think they are built to beat the Celtics. I love Mikal Bridges. He's the perfect guy to go with Bronson and Julius Randle and OG Anunoby and what they've built there. I think if they stayed healthy last year, I think that they could have played with the Celtics and taken them to 6 or even 7 games. I don't think they would have beaten them last year, but now with the addition of Bridges, I think they can beat the Celtics, even with their current irritation of their team. And who knows with Porzingis? They're already talking about him not being back until the All-Star break. And I know home court shouldn't matter in the NBA. And granted, I feel like if OG Anunoby doesn't get hurt against Indy, the Knicks beat the Pacers probably in 5 games because of how close Game 3 was. And his absence was probably the difference in that game. And they get blown out in Game 4 anyway. And they probably win that series in 5 with OG. But it's a huge what if with the Knicks from last year, in my opinion. But I think that they're right there at the Celtics this year. And they should be a top 3 seed in the East once again, the Knicks. But yeah, I'm super pumped for this Knicks team.
So we are going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, it will be Lepore Betting, where we do our bets. So I'm looking forward to see who you have as your risk and your safe bets. We'll be right back.
Betting. It was named after you because you are probably known for losing a lot of bets, especially when it comes to the horse racing.
My lightning 5 picks. These are the ones I like. I mean, I love them. In my picks, you'll hear them later on. Yeah, that is my best bet.
You'll hear it in Stuff's Betting.
Yes, that is my best bet.
All right, we're back on the Doug Saravo Show, first episode of Season 8, which is brought to you by the Monkey Bar and Grill. Swing on by. We have Madison Miller of the Madison Miller Podcast. So I'm going to read you the odds, and then I'm going to start off saying which one you have safe, or a risk. All right, so Kansas City Chiefs are at plus 575. The 49ers are at plus 625. Ravens plus 900. Lions at plus 1,000. And then you have the Eagles, the Bengals, the Texans at plus 1,300. And then you have the Jets, the Bills, the Packers at plus 1,700. And then you have the Cowboys at plus 1,800. And the Dolphins at plus 2,500. And the Rams at plus 2,500. And we're not going to get through the rest because they're terrible. So let's start with your safe bet. Who is your safe bet to win the Super Bowl?
My safe bet's the San Francisco 49ers at plus 625. Yeah, Christian McCaffrey's not playing in the preseason, but he'll be back for the regular season for sure. And the Chiefs are obviously a safe bet too, but it's so hard to three-peat. Like the Golden State Warriors didn't three-peat. I don't remember the last time I saw a three-peat in sports. I mean, was it the Yankees when I was 3, 4, 5 years old, but I didn't know much about sports, obviously? I guess that's when it was, but three-peats rarely ever happen. And I think the 49ers still have to be in the conversation despite the Brandon Ayuk stuff. I still think that that's a safe bet, in my opinion, and I like Brock Purdy. They have a good offensive line. Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers came oh so close last season. But Patrick Mahomes just did Patrick Mahomes things in overtime, as we know. So I'm going to say my safe bet would be the 49ers.
Now, who will be your risky bet?
My risky bet's a good one. I'm going to say the Bengals because Joe Burrow is back, and I do think that the Bengals, if they stay healthy, and they're in a very hard division, which makes it risky for them, and they have the experience of being in the Super Bowl in the past, and they were in an AFC title game. I believe they were in the AFC title game the year before that against the Chiefs.
Yeah, they were before Burrow went down.
Before Burrow went down, yes. And oh wait, so the year after they were in the Super Bowl. You're right. So it was the 2022 season. They were in the AFC title game and they lost to K-State. That was the year before Burrow went down. Yes, you're right. So I would go with the Bengals as my risky pick. They're in a hard division. They get Burrow back for the full season. We'll see how he looks. I know there's some turmoil with that, with the T. Higgins situation and the fact that he didn't get paid. I know they paid Jamar Chase, right?
I don't think so yet.
Well, if they didn't pay him, I think they're going to pay him.
Yeah, they will.
And I know they just lost one of their defensive ends for the season, but I do think that they have the depth to overcome that. And plus, you could always fix issues at the trade deadline if you have to. But I think that the Bengals are a good risk bet at 13-1.
Now, this is a fun bet. So the way I look at fun bets is, you know what? I'm going to go with this team because you never know. They may surprise people and they may end up winning a Super Bowl. So for me, I have two of these just because you never know. They may be that team to surprise people.
Right.
Plus 2,500, I think you could go with the Rams to get back there and win a Super Bowl. Or you could go with the Texans at plus 1,300. These are good teams, but no one's talking them as being the top dog to win the Super Bowl. Just like when we won the Super Bowl in 2008 and 2012. I think we were good enough to get there and win, but people weren't talking about the Giants being the favorite to win the Super Bowl. They just had something against us, and we proved us wrong. So who is your fun bet to win the Super Bowl this year?
You mentioned them. It's the Rams. The Rams were there several years ago. Granted, Aaron Donald's retired, and they have a different cast of characters. I mean, Puka Nacua wasn't there, but now they have him with Cooper Kupp, and their running backs are good. Matt Stafford just got paid, and he seems like he's happy. But the Rams are a fun bet, but I call them risky too because of the loss of Aaron Donald. But I think they are improved enough to potentially make a run in the NFC.
All right, so if you had to pick a Super Bowl matchup for next year in August, who would it be and why? And who would win?
Okay, I said it in the AFC. I'm going to probably go with the Bengals, but that could change in a couple weeks. Obviously, I'm leaning Bengals, and in the NFC, it's a team I didn't bring up, and we talked about them a little bit. I really think Saquon Barkley is going to have a huge difference in Philadelphia, so I'm going to go Eagles-Bengals right now in the Super Bowl. I have to.
Eagles-Bengals.
Yeah.
And who hoists the Lombardi Trophy?
Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
Good.
Although
I like that pick.
Although I could see the Eagles and Saquon being what McCaffrey is on San Francisco, and I could see them winning the Super Bowl after they came so close the year before against the Chiefs, and they had that pass interference call against them. That's how close they were to winning that Super Bowl. So I could see it being the Eagles, but right now I'm leaning Bengals over the Eagles, but that obviously could change with injuries and stuff.
Now, before we let you go, out of the 4 major sports, I want one prediction. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be, the Yankees are going to win the World Series. It could be a surprise off-season move that may happen to them, or it could be the Knicks acquire someone at the deadline, or the Rangers do this, or whatever it may be, or the Lakers do this, the Lakers win this. So I want a surprise prediction that none of us may think.
Ooh, I love when you ask me this question. What's a good one? I am going to say, I don't know if this will be a surprise, but I think it may surprise a lot of people. I think the Minnesota Vikings can win double-digit games, and I think there's a chance they can win the NFC North. I'm not going to go as far as to say that they're going to win the NFC North, but I'm going to say they have a winning record this year.
That is a surprise because a lot of people have them finishing at the bottom of that division.
I know. That's why I said that. I just think they're a better team than given credit for, despite the rookie quarterback. They could be the Texans of this year.
Yeah, you guys heard it here first.
Except the difference is that Minnesota, I think, I'll put it this way. Not one person had the Texans in the playoffs last year. But the difference, I would say, is that this Vikings team is not far removed from the playoffs. That's why I think there's a chance that they could be like this year's Texans or even this year's Rams from like a veteran standpoint, despite the rookie quarterback.
That's a good choice. You never know.
Yeah, I'm going to say the Minnesota Vikings make the postseason.
Because Minnesota was a playoff team, and then they lost Cousins.
They lost Cousins, yeah. And then they lost to the Giants, and then the next year, they probably would have made the playoffs last year if they didn't lose Cousins.
That's an interesting answer.
Yeah, so I'm going to say Minnesota's a playoff team. They surprised some people.
All right, thank you, Madison. And before you go, you want to let us know where we could find your podcast and where we could either watch or listen?
All right, so you can find my podcast on Spotify, on YouTube, Google Podcasts. It's called Madison Miller Podcast, as you promoted throughout the show. This week I started getting back into things because I took a little bit of a summer vacation from doing my regular shows, but the regular shows came back on Monday. Now that football preseason's into swing, and then come the end of this month and into next month, it's going to be heavy football content. So get ready for that. And of course, with the baseball playoffs as well. So it's going to be a lot of football and baseball.
All right, thank you, Madison. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you next time. And everyone could go follow your podcast, the Madison Miller Podcast.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Madison. We appreciate it.
Anytime.
So Malibu at the diner part of the casino.
That they're gonna slip back a little bit. Ben,
Do you ever ask yourself the question as to
For this town, things that haven't been done before.
Feel like it's more than just Joe Biden, though. Like, it's just like people
Overpay for DeGrom, and I think this is a great way for us to gather together.
I'll be looking for another job after this is over, I can tell you that.
Here, with your name behind it, hoping that...
Why did Trump fire Fauci? He could have gotten rid of him. There's a lot of things you can have checked out.
So, talk whatever we want.
It's sports. Well, I'll tell you, no matter, I don't have to worry about my feelings to understand that.